Well, it's the 22nd day of July. Over here and check the rain gauge. 22nd day of July, and there's just a little over 2 inches of rain in that gauge, which is not bad. Some places had more, some places had less, but you have to take what you want or what you get. Today we're going to try to lime our old clover plot that we planted back in 2011 and had exceptional grazing pressure results. But as everything, it's time to change that out. And I can't believe I was just frost seeding that. It just seems like yesterday, but it's back in March, and here it is, the 22nd day of July. Now here was the most critical part of food plotting, and where a lot of guys come up short. Whitetail Institute offers this soil test kit. It's around $14, and if you want a priority mail, it's around $8. So you got about $22 in it. I mailed this in last Monday. It was like the 13th, and I had the results back last Saturday, which would have been somewhere around the 17th or the 18th. So I mean, it only took like 5 business days to get your reports back, and that's your first step. If you delete this, not to say that it's going to be a solve-all, but it is definitely needed. And on that plot, it said I needed to apply 5,625 pounds of ag lime. Well, the problem with that is accessibility, and a lot of us have that same problem of trying to get into these remote areas with big equipment. The other alternative is pale lime. Now, Whitetail Institute sends these quarterly magazines out, and in this particular one, it explains extensively the liming procedure. Pellet lime and ag lime are the same. The only difference is the ag lime is a lot cheaper. I have approximately in 1,300 pounds of pale lime, $151.74. I could have bought a lot of ag lime for that. But as Whitetail Institute explains, the reason a person goes with, especially for the food plotter, is the accessibility of equipment, accessibility of getting into an area that's secluded, where you can't get the ag lime in. Even though it's cheaper, it's almost, well, non-productive to try to get a big machine into these areas. Now, the alternative to that is the ag lime and the pale lime are the same material. They put a polymer content to the pale lime to make it a pelletized, but as soon as the water hits it, it dissolves it. Both of them work equally well. The pale lime, you can get by with less tonnage or less pounds per acre. Now, the pH in the soil that clover grew in has deteriorated down to a level of, you probably won't be able to see that, but 5.2. So they recommend raising it to 6.5. That's almost neutral. 7 would be neutral. 6.5 is what they recommend. So there's 13 tenths. They measure that pH in tenths. So there's 13 tenths in your measurement of your pH well, there's 13/10 difference in this, but from 5.2 to 6.5 that's recommended. So with that said, here's what you can do. On this egg lime, you can see corrective applications apply 80 to 100 pounds per 1/10 of pH correction per acre. So that means that I got to raise that up 13/10 to get the 6.5. That's 13/10. So at 100 pounds, I have 33 bags of ag lime or pel lime on this truck. That will give me right at 100 pounds per tenth. So I need 1,300 pounds of pelletized lime, and that would be 100 pounds per tenth at 13/10. Back to your soil sample. You have that at up there in the right hand corner, 5.2. It needs to go to 6.5. There's 13/10 difference in that. So if we put, you can go 80 or to 100 pounds, and I elected to go to the 100 pounds. So that would be 1,300 pounds versus if you went with the ag lime, you would have had to go with this figure here of 5,625 pounds, which would be basically 3 ton, and you could have probably bought that for around $60, something in that. But here is the drawback of the ag lime. If you went with ag lime, you're not going to be able to spread it with a spreader like this, and you're not going to be able to spread it with a spreader like this, or the spreader that I have up top. You won't be able to spread it with these 3 spreaders. You also cannot spread the ag lime with a spreader like this behind me. This spreader was designed for seed, grass seed, fertilizer, loose material. If you dump ag lime in a spreader like this, it's so fine that it'll conform to that cone, and that agitator won't go around like it's supposed to, and it'll bust the agitator and the transmission. Unfortunately, I learned that the hard way. Even though on the onset the pelletized lime costs more, it's more user-friendly for the food plot applications, because unless you have the proper spreader that I can get from the co-op, but I can't get it into the area I want to get it into to spread the 5,600 pounds. So therefore, I go with the pelletized lime at 100 pounds per tenth. And from, like I said, from 5.2 to 6.5, that's 13/10 that you have to raise the pH. So that would be at 100 pounds, would be 1,300 pounds of pelletized lime. Both of them are the same. The ag lime may be just a little bit faster because it is finer, but once the pel lime gets moisture to it, that polymer coating or that made it a pellet dissolves, and it's the same. It's mined from the same, it's the exact same lime. So, and you want to stay away from those so-called liquid limes, because they're nothing but a nightmare. Number one, you don't have a sprayer to spray them. They'll plug them up. And number two, they're only spraying on top of the ground. You have to incorporate your ag lime or your pel lime into the soil. That's where it's going to work. It's not working on top. Remember, it's not a fertilizer. Lime is not a fertilizer, it's an amendment. So yeah, you can go ahead and spray some liquid nitrogen on, something like that, to enhance your growth. But you're just sort of, well, like I say, it's really hard to have a sprayer. They plug them up, and it's just not cool. So go with the pelletized lime. You'll have the best results, even though it'll cost a little more money on the front end. So let's get to putting the lime, getting it hooked up, and trying to see if we can get down in the field. Yeah, while we're up here, just go over these beans a little bit. You can see the browsing effect, and that's what I planted those for. I assumed they would be a summertime crop, and so my assumption was right. There are some browsing going on, and that's all right, because that's what they were planted here for. And they're, like I say, you can see where the deer have been in there nipping the tops off. But that was my plan, so that's kind of, you know, that's worked out good. It offered a high protein food source in the summertime. The corn over here is looking good. I see some predation on it. That could be coon, but so we walk in here, you can see the ears are being formed. It's a real critical time. The silk, the tassel. It's nice we got this moisture, so it'll bring that pollen down onto the silk and pollinate the corn. If you have exceptional dry years, sometimes that pollination doesn't work because this here, on the tassel, got to fall down here on the silk. Well, when it's really hot and dry and at nighttime, that just falls right on past it. So corn's coming along. We got a lot of ears in there. And here's something I want to address while we're up here. Killing time. It's still a little wet. You can see this new generation of velvet leaf growing in there, and that's why when it dries out, we'll come back in here with the stale disting process and wipe that out and set it back. It'll get dry this weekend, but you can see that new seed bank germinating, and that's just an alternative to come in here and stale disc to get rid of that, and we didn't have to use the herbicide, but that'll keep setting that back, and you can see how it just really germinated throughout. So we'll get after that. Well, it's 11:30 now. We had to wait to get the moisture dried off. It was too wet. You want to keep in mind you got to work with nature, not against it. I tried to come down here earlier when it was cooler. It was like 67 this morning, getting warmed up. But I had to wait for I had 100% humidity, and it was just, well, too greasy. I couldn't get across the Missouri crossing. So now we're down here on the field with the spreader. And I'm going to go over this real quick with you. Now you see that clover in there. A lot of guys, if I sprayed herbicide on that, as thick as that clover stand is, remember back in March, I was down here frost seeding that on, and it grew in pretty good, and I mowed it real close to the ground. It's been 10 days ago, and that clover really grew in good for a frost seed. Now you got some grasses over here, and that's understandable, but you could spray them. But I want to take this out because I want to put a fall Baraska plant in it, and this has been 11 years down here, and like I say, most guys would consider that a super good clover, and like I say, you could come in here and spray that and probably bring it along, but you know, putting the lime on it, bring the pH up, but all you have to do is venture over here, and you can see it's really heavy inundated with grasses, and this is 11 years old, and it drew numerous wildlife, particular white-tailed deer in here. But I let this go last year, but over there where that clover is, I just want to show you an example. that little nurturing along, you could bring that back, and I'm sort of going to be heartbroken when I put a plow to that. But you have to do that. So like I say, up in here it's just heavily inundated with grass, and there's no clover in here whatsoever. And so we'll get it turned over today. But just wanted to show you the results of that frost seeding. We went in there, we had winter greens in there, and we went in and just frost seeded over the bare dirt. And like I say, there's pretty good majority of people would probably say that was good to go. Now you could spray for this grass, but it's coming out. Another thing while I'm on the ground, when you've got your spreader running, try to get into the path of the spreader. Don't be throwing your fertilizer or your lime off the field. So you want to make sure you get the lime on the field, not over in the weeds and whatever. So you won't even be getting close to that. We'll be staying out in the middle, and we'll get the broadcast pattern, and because there's no use of getting real close to that. We can be right in here with the tractor and get the lime in there. Now remember, we got to raise this field 13 tenths from, I believe it was 5.5 to 6.2. So that's 13, and we're putting 100 pounds of pelletized lime on there because it's right at an acre, and that ought to get us raised up, and then we'll get it plowed in, covered up, and get it working. So we probably won't get to plant the whatever I'm going to plant in here. We probably won't be planting until sometime, the first 10 days in August. Let's put it that way, sometime in August. So let's get this on. Yeah, I will be wearing a respirator and eye goggles because I don't want that lime. It's the same lime that's on the road, but there ain't no use of breathing it because it'll get pretty dusty over there. So if you got a long sleeve shirt, and I got some rubber gloves over there when I pull it on with it. You want to have this so you're not breathing that in, because it's not a herbicide, but yet there's no use of breathing that much dust in either. Yeah, I want to show you why you can't use ag lime in the spreader. You see that agitator? If you put ag lime in there, it's too heavy, and it will crush that because it will take the shape of that lime. So that's why you got to go with cow lime. Like I said, there are benefits, pluses and minuses with both limes. The plus with the pelletized lime is I can apply that with that spreader. Now, that's a hand push spreader. I'll show you. The other alternative is your bag spreader. You see, that goes on fairly fast with these two alternates in putting your hell lime on. So they wouldn't do you any good with ag lime. And they make these spreaders here that go behind four-wheelers, so I could have one of those. But keep in mind, you're going to walk on this field, you'd be walking 1,300 pounds on it. That would be 100 pounds per tenth, and we got to raise it 13 tenths. So if you don't have a tractor with a spreader, you can do it by hand with, well, that's least inexpensive. And if you do it in the cool of the morning, and if you can get the lime to the field, that's the other thing. This is so back in the bush that it's hard to get the lime to the field. Lucky I could just barely look at it. And I'll show you the mud on that Missouri crossing. So, but anyhow, these are the two alternatives. Hell lime, ag lime, same lime, gonna have just as fast, except it got pluses and minuses. And this is a plus for the ag lime for the fruit pot hobbyist. With the tractor, it's pretty easy to see where you went. You know, like I said, don't get too close to the bush because you'll just be throwing your fertilizer and your amendment into the bush. So let's put some more on. Okay, the creek's got some water in it, and as you can see in the foreground, the track's going up that hill. So I'll show you, I have to drive the tractor pretty fast to get up through here. You see what the challenge was this morning. The slick gets up here. I need to get some more rock on the hill, but it's always something. But I had to go fast. I tried to back up and it wouldn't back up, so we had to go fast. Yeah, I had a weed on that. Anyhow, you can see the slickness of it, and I wanted to spin out going through there. I said we've had about 2.5 inches of rain down here this month, and so you can see the mud on the other side. And once those tires got mud on, coming up here, they was losing traction really fast. So I have to drive through the new clover plot to get to the old one, but because I can't get down the other hill or up the other hill, it's way too steep. And when I come down, this is the thing about having food plots in out of the way places. Because in the field you wouldn't have it. But you can see this is coming down the hill and the tires lose traction and just slide. So there's no way you're going to get up that steep incline. You can only get up on it when it's dry. So that's another Achilles heel about using ag lime, is sometimes you just can't get access to the fields because of the remoteness. Anyhow, let's get over here and get this last of the 1,300 pounds put on. There's 400 pounds in that hopper right there, and it's loose. If you had 400 pounds of ag lime, that would take, it looks like an ice cream cone shape. and that agitator could not spin this around like that does. And that's why you can't use ag lime in a spreader like that. Now you see why you're going to wear a respirator and eye goggles when you're putting that on. That stuff's really dusty, and it's the same limestone that comes off the road, on the dusty road. You know, they take it out of the same quarry. But here's what I want to show you. Now you can see the lime there. That's the lime, and we got her covered really good with that spreader. And there's, like I said, we had to raise it 13/10, and they recommend 80 to 100 pounds per tenth. So we went with 100 pounds, and that would be for each tenth, that'd be, figure out to be 1,300 pounds, 13/10. And I hope you've seen why you use the pell lime. Now, both these limes are the same. Just remember that. It's just that all they did to make that granular or pelletized is add a polymer water soap to it, and that made it into a pellet. But once it gets wet, it'll break right down, same as your ag lime. And I'm at a dilemma right now. I don't know whether to disc this in or plow it in. I was going to plow it, but the problem with it is, when you get over by the trees, I guess I'm going to turn it under with the plow. I'll just stay away from the trees and disc it in. But, I think it's probably dry enough to plow. We'll know once we get the plow hooked up. Oh, it's 1:30 on the 22nd. And it's got dried, but I elected to run the disc on this. I'm going to disc this under more of that good clover. It's really going to break my heart for what a heart I got. But the reason I want to disc it is when I get around them trees, I don't want to be pulling up tree roots and all that. So we set the disc in a real aggressive formation where it'll do a lot of fast cutting. And if we get it turned under, we can disc it 2 or 3 times, maybe, you know, and it'll get that lime work down in there. So like I said, I didn't want to get around those trees and start hitting tree roots and all that. So let's get the disc run. We're turning this under. We're incorporating that lime into this ground. And this soil is turning up pretty nice. And it just goes to show you, just because it's black doesn't mean that's nice black dirt, low ground. But the pH is off. And all good soil in due time, just through the atmosphere, will go acidic over time. That's why it's really critical to do the soil test. Now when we get over in here, this is why I elected the disc, because these tree roots could be running out here and I don't want to fight that. So I'll just keep disking it up and getting a soil bed. And there again, once again, you can see the line right there. Got good coverage, and it really breaks my heart to bury this clover, but all things have their time. Well, there you go, right at 3 o'clock. We got her disked it up pretty good. It really worked up real good. That's as good as plowing. And like I say, I can scuff that. You can see how loose that is. And just the right moisture. But we'll let her dry down. It's supposed to get 90s here over the weekend. Then we'll come back in and hit it again. I didn't go, that tree over there always has a traditional scrape under it. And I didn't really want to get there, afraid I might bust the limb off. So we just went along the edge, and there's not that much there anyway. I keep that little patch mode, and the clover could grow in that. But basically, you're looking at an acre here. That's from this point here down to there is 105 yards. So, and then you're about 45 yards across at the widest point. So that would figure in your acre. And here is why, here's the reason I didn't plow. Because if I'd have plowed, I knew these tree roots were in here, and that would have just been something you would have had to, well, like I say, I'm picking them up now, and it would have just been more of them. So that's why I elected to disc that, so it would ride up over the top of them. Because when you do got trees like that around your plot, you're going to have that tree root issue. And this way we circumvented it. And that nice thing about that disc, and I want to show you something on this disc. As you notice, I got the blades at a real sharp angle. And that's achieved off this wood setup just by pulling this pin and moving this back and pulling that pin and moving that forward. But here's something most people don't have. This lever right here, you watch that, that'll put the aggression on the front blade and make it light in the back. And all you have to do is push it back the other way, and that levels it out. That, as you can see, that's changing the pitch considerably. Now, if that in that position, all I got to do is hit this lever, and you can see that blade or that disc tilting. That puts all the weight on one side. Like right now, you can see if we come around here in the back, you can see how aggressive I can get that set on that side. It's basically like a plow, because it'll really put this side, all the weight shifts to this, and then all I gotta do, push that lever back, we'll go back here to the blade, to the disc, We'll look at it from the rear, and you can see it's level again. Now if I want to go the other way, it's tipped to the right, so now you're putting the weight of that front disc on that side. And that really makes this disc work good. Now, I've ran a Gannon box blade for over 50 years. I've probably done 20,000 residential homes in my lifetime with a box scraper. That setup is sold by Gannon. You won't buy that at your local farm and hardware store or your so-called box scraper, because those are just basically junk. If it doesn't say Gannon on it and it doesn't have a 3-spool valve, you don't have anything. All you got is something dragging around with dead weight made in Japan or in China dragging around behind you. That's what's nice about my equipment. It's American made, and that's how it's going to stay in my lifetime. Ford tractor. That tractor, they put them all the same for the size that it is. And very seldom, if ever, I've never needed 4-wheel assist. Matter of fact, 4-wheel assist makes your steering just that much harder to do because the front wheels are trying to pull. So at least these wheels, when I want to turn, they'll slide. Anyway, that's it from the food plot. I'll probably be coming in here. I had it soil tested for pure traction, and then in the spring of next year we'll rock and roll and re-go with clover fusion type blend again. So that's it. Getting warm, dirt turned up, beautiful, beautiful.